All right, we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. Good morning, everybody. Um, uh,
Morning, Pat.
Morning, Barb. Morning, Katie. We're going to start another Mornings with the Museum program today. The theme for today's program is the wonders of winter. My name is Pat Kane. Again, I want to thank you for joining us for this regular program that we're going to be doing monthly. In the next couple months, going to be doing it again in February and in March, April, and so on and so forth. So tune in on the mornings, second Wednesdays in the future. We're going to try to do this program second Wednesday of each month, Mornings with the Museum program. So let's go around and introduce ourselves to those watching, whether you're watching live or watching recorded. Again, I'm Pat Kane, Public Programs, Visitor Services Coordinator, working at the Museum of the Grand Prairie, but also doing historical and cultural programs throughout the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. Barb, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Barb Garvey. I'm the director of the Museum and Education Department at the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. And I oversee both the Museum of the Grand Prairie and the Homer Lake Interpretive Center with primary responsibility for the museum.
Thank you, Barb. And Katie, how about you?
Hi, I'm Katie Snyder. I'm the Education Program Specialist here at the Museum at Grand Prairie in the Champaign County Forest Preserve District.
Yay!
Thanks to Katie and Barb for joining us this morning for this program. We would also love to know who you are. Let us know where you're watching from by writing down in the comment section below where you're watching from this morning. Ramona is tuning in from Rockford, Illinois. Kim is tuning in from Lincoln. So let us know where you are watching from. We would love to know by writing it down in the comment section below. Also, this program is geared to be sort of a live Q&A also. So if you have any questions for us, whether it's winter-related things, whether it's historical or museum topics or any other thoughts, please write those questions or comments down in the comment section, and we'd love to answer those questions for you as best as we can live during the course of this program. Makes it a lot more fun for you and for us, well more engaging when you ask us some questions. A few things to promote that are winter related before we get into the program. This Thursday, we're beginning first ever CCFPD Snowflake search. There will be 30 snowflakes hidden throughout the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, as well as some fun historical and environmental facts next to these snowflakes that are beautifully painted and decorated throughout the County Forest Preserve District. So if you're in the area, get out and check out those snowflakes, see if you can find all 30 of them, and then post your pictures next to them using the hashtag CCFPD Snowflake Search, and post those pictures on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because we would love to see you finding these snowflakes out in the beautiful winter scene in the Forest Preserves. It's quite possibly one of my favorite times in the Forest Preserve District, because once you get a nice blanket of snow across the Forest Preserves, it looks so beautiful. So get out and find those snowflakes if you can. Another way to get out this winter and have some things to do out in the wintertime is by using the Forest Preserve District's winter activity guide put together by some of our staff members in the education department. There's lots of fun activities for you to complete in that winter activity guide while you're out in nature exploring the wintertime forests. And you can get copies of those winter activity guides at the Museum of the Grand Prairie at our front door, also at the front door of the Homer Lake Interpretive Center or Homer Lake Forest Preserve, and then also at the campground host cabin at Middle Fork River Forest Preserve. The winter activity guide is also available digitally on ccfpd.org. So use that winter activity guide for all ages to get out and explore the forest preserves in the winter. Okay, so we got some other folks tuning in. Joyce from Decatur. Thank you, Joyce, for tuning in this morning. Let us know where you're watching from by writing that down below. Okay, we're going to jump into today's program. And the theme for our discussion today is the wonders of winter. And I know we all have a lot of wonderful things to talk about when it comes to winter-related history and other topics. So who wants to go first, talking about some wonderful winter-related things.
Katie, why don't you go first?
Okay. All right. So I am downstairs in our museum around the staircase of Discovering Home. And we have in that area a sleigh, which you can see behind me, but let's see if I can get you to see it a little better. Oh, that's me. Are we seeing it a little better? Yeah, there we go. So this sleigh was owned by Charles Johnson. He was an immigrant from Sweden. He bought this in 1877. It was called an Albany Cutter. It was a pretty high-end, pricey kind of vehicle. During that time, they used sleighs like this, kind of like people might use snowmobiles these days, but also for travel, but more for recreational. This was pulled by one horse, and it's a two-person sleigh. And when you look at the seat, it's a small seat, so people were a little smaller in those days. I think that it would probably be two children these days. You can see that there's a blanket on the seat, and I don't know if you can see it that well, I can't get that close, but there's a little foot warmer down below, which I think is real interesting. I mean, I think sleighs are interesting because I can't really even imagine these days us having enough snow for that to be a viable mode of transportation. So this would have been around the Broadlands area because that's where Charles Johnson lived. He was a farmer out that way. Also, there were sleigh bells on the sleighs at the time. I've got a reproduction right here. They make a real nice little sound. They were used just, to caution people that you were coming, but also as status symbols. We have in our case over here, we have an original that was in the Arthur area, and this is like a reproduction of the same kind of one because it has these petals around the side, so they could be rather ornate. And one last thing I want to show you over here is we have this chart behind me of different snowfalls and how high they were. This one that's very high, if I was standing up, you would see that it's almost, I'm maybe a little bit taller than that, and I'm 5'8". That was in 1977. So we've had some pretty significant snowfalls in the area, just maybe not for a while. We're kind of waiting for our first significant snowfall around here still, aren't we?
Oh yeah. We still haven't in Central Illinois. We haven't had a good amount of snow fall. Maybe just a couple inches here or there over the past weekend. But yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show people part of one of the exhibits we have down here, which you may remember if you've come to the museum before, and if not, maybe you'll come see it sometime in the future.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie. Sleighs and sleigh bells. That sound is, every time I hear that sound, it makes me think of Christmas time. And even though it's January, I'm already excited for next Christmas. So, big fan of Christmas. I know Barb's a big fan of Christmas as well.
Oh
Barb.
my gosh. Oh my God. Yeah, a little bit too crazy.
Barb, did you want to go next? Talk about
Sure, I'll go next. I wanted to comment on Katie's the blanket and the foot warmer, of course, were a thing that kept you warm in a sleigh. But interestingly, they were carried over into early automobiles because early cars didn't have any way to be. They didn't have heaters, so a lot of people continued to use those blankets well into the 20th century, and those foot warmers. Of course, the driver couldn't. But that's a great little detail in our exhibit. You should come see it.
Yeah.
When we open again, hopefully on March 1st. But this picture that I chose to show you is the old settlers gathering in Urbana in 1883. And a lot of these people called themselves snowbirds. And that did not mean that they went to Florida or the South for the winter. It meant that they had survived the winter of the deep snow. There weren't any. The winter of the deep snow was the winter from 1830 to 1831. The weird thing about winter statistics is that they always cover the end of one year and the beginning of another year. So you can't talk about snow in 1977. You have to talk about the snows of 1976 to 77, and to get depth, because the snow can still be on the ground. Anyway, that's a nerd thing. In the winter of the deep snow with 1830 to 31, I first learned about when I was reading about Abraham Lincoln. His family came to Illinois, and their first winter here was probably the worst winter ever on record. It was an exceptionally warm fall, and then that meant that people didn't bring their crops in time, thinking that it was going to stay warm. And then it started snowing in December, and by some accounts, it didn't stop snowing for 2 months. The snow reached a depth of 4 feet. Then they had an ice storm on top of that, and so there was a layer of ice on top of the 4-foot snow. Some places it crusted over. Some places it drifted to 20 feet. Now, this is a world that has no trains and it has no automobiles. This is just surviving on the prairie in that kind of snow. And then there was a couple of people recorded that the temperatures dropped below 10 below for over 2 weeks. So, wow. Yeah, and lots of people lived in log cabins. There were accounts of the snow coming in through the chinks in the log cabin. There were actually, as a record, someone wrote down that there were wolves circling around outside of Urbana because it was so. What happened was that the deer got trapped in the high snow and with the icy crust on the top of it, and then the wolves came after the trapped deer. So and some people think it was the last winter that there were bison in Illinois because the bison all died that winter too. And there was actually several crops were never grown in Illinois again, like cotton, and there was a meat shortage for several years afterwards because people's livestock died. So it was a terrible winter. And the people who survived that winter called themselves snowbirds. And they decided that they were hardy enough to be called the oldest settlers. And then they would have these reunions. And this is the old settlers reunion picture from Urbana. So that's my winter story. It's kind of desperate, but we should always remember how much better we have it with central heating. And even when the roads are bad, we don't have to get out there in a wagon.
Is that Crystal Lake Park, Barb? Do you know?
I think it's over there, yeah. I think that's where they took the pictures. It's actually over closer to Busey Woods, I think.
Okay.
About one major winter event in Central Illinois history. I'd love to hear from anybody watching if you can recall any winter events in your lifetime that you remember. I know that my parents talk about. I think they said I was a newborn baby, so it would have been February, I believe, of '91, when there was the Valentine's Day ice storm.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, I got some stories about that.
We've got stories, but that's funny that you were a new.
Yeah. I was just under 2 months old, and then ice storm in the area. From what I've read about, 50,000 people without power for close to a week or so. Katie or Barb, do you recall that time? Anything you want to share from that particular ice storm?
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't have power for a couple of days. A lot of people in my neighborhood didn't have it for a couple of weeks. And I had a 2-year-old child and a 6-year-old child, and I kept giving them, because we had a water heater that had its own pilot light, so I still had hot water. So I just kept giving everybody hot baths. That way we stay warm.
And ours was out for, I want to say maybe a week. I lived in Urbana. I had a almost 2-year-old. We went and stayed with a friend, Gary Claren, in Paxton, or it was Paxton. So it was a small town that still had power, and we didn't in Urbana. It just didn't have anything to do with anything except for if your lines were down. And my husband at the time would go in and wrap the pipes and try to make sure that our pipes didn't bust because we were out of power for so long. It was beautiful though, wasn't it, Barb?
Yeah, in a scary kind of way.
Yeah.
I have more stories about it, but I won't
Yeah,
scare you.
I do too, but I'm not sure if they're good for sharing on. I'll tell you later.
But I had some friends who had a newborn baby, just like you, Pat, and they came to our house to stay warm. I don't know why, because we didn't have power either, and we all slept on the living room floor together. It was very strange.
That's kind of fun. Makes it fun.
Human body heat kept everybody warm.
My parents my parents talk about, we lived in rural Thomasboro at the time. We lived out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Thomasboro, and my mom's watching, so maybe she can chime in here. But I think my dad and my mom talk about that when people were driving by the house, they would stop in, and we had like so many people, just some random strangers off the road would stop in because they couldn't go anywhere else. They didn't want to go any farther.
Wow.
And my mom talks about making grilled cheese and tomato soup, like just over and over and over again to try and, keep people warm and, other things. But,
yeah, I don't remember it as a bad time or scary. I mean, the worst thing that was going to happen is that the pipes were going to bust, which is a big deal, but it's not like we worried for our lives like they would have in the story Barb was telling.
Yeah.
I was a little concerned about my 2-year-old. I was like a little worried about hypothermia because she was just sleeping all the time. But I think it was just because there wasn't anything else to do,
Yeah. And well, I had gone to take refuge in a friend's house, so with my little one. So, and Barb and I were talking before this started about the 60s and the 70s, and because we're a little older than Pat, and and when I was a little girl in the Chicago area, I think it was 67, we had like a record snowstorm, and we used to climb up on the school roof anyway, in all sorts of times. But so we went up on the school roof, and then we would jump into these drifts of snow that had drifted up all the way up to the roof of the school. And when my mother found that out, who may or may not be watching, she was not happy because she was like, you could have sunk way down in there. And, I was saying to Barb said, well, there's probably other people with you. I said, yeah, but everybody was just kids, because at the time, parents didn't go out with their kids when they played. They just kind of opened the door and we went out and played, even with 10, 20 feet drifts. The door was open and we'd come back later on at lunchtime or something. But I remember that as fun, but I wasn't the grown up trying to clear the way or, anything like that.
So we were also talking about the winter of 1977, which Katie mentioned earlier. I think that the snow depth, you're right in front of it, Katie. It was like 65 inches that year?
It says 68, and I don't know if that means drifted or if that was a fall. That seems
no. That was the total snowfall for the year. I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
but it was also a long time of snow cover. So you don't think about it, but you could have snow cover for 3 months, and that's a long time, right? To be trudging around in the snow. But that winter was bad, and 1978 was bad as well. So I was recalling that I was at college in southern Indiana in 1977, and Indiana University actually shut down for 3 weeks because they did not stockpile enough coal to run the heat in the university. And the Ohio River and all of its tributaries were frozen over, so they couldn't get any more coal to us. So I had to go home and have a very extended spring break, which was fine, except that then when we got back to school, we had to make up all the time. So I had lots of Saturday classes and evening classes, and I loved it, but my contemporaries were not very happy.
And I don't
know
if anybody listening knows if we had anything like that in the Chicago land area. I would think we would. I would have been in high school, and I mean, I didn't have an access to a car, so I walked everywhere, including to school. And I just don't remember that one. So, but one would think that it would have happened in Chicago as well,
Mm-hmm.
I remember one when I was in college in 2011, so not too long ago, 10 years ago, February 2011, I was at Illinois State University at the time, and it wasn't a large amount of snow. I think I read that there was maybe 6 to 8 inches of snow here or there, but I read that there were 50 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts that were creating large drifts, and the temperatures, just the real temperatures were dipping below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, combined with a large wind chill. The university was shut down for, like I said, 3 days. I remember I lived at Hewitt Manchester residence halls there, and we would have to walk over to Watterson Towers to eat. And Watterson Towers, they had started to run out of food. So all these kids that were going there, the only thing that they could give us was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and apples for at least a day and a half or so until the food trucks could get in and things could open back up again. But that's a big storm that I remember in my lifetime, not too long ago.
Pat, in front of Watterson, I lived there before you, a long time before you went for your peanut butter sandwiches. But there's like a wind tunnel there when you try to walk in the door. That must have been a hard place to walk in to get your peanut butter and jelly. You know what I'm saying? It's like there is a big, just the way things are built there. There's a big wind tunnel.
Yeah, it's a meteorological oddity. I remember people would always talk about if you had anything in your hands, like papers or anything that were just loose, and you're walking in front of Watterson Towers, don't think that you're going to be able to hang on to them, because it was a weird sort of wind tunnel. Kind of almost, it reminds me of the wind tunnel that exists out in front of the museum. Barb says it's one of the windiest spots in the whole Forest Preserve District, because wind is blowing off of Buffalo Trace Prairie that is just not being stopped by anything, and it gets so windy out front of the museum. So. Okay, well, I was going to talk a little bit more about Sleigh Bells, but Katie covered it so well, and we're getting close to the end of the time that she's got those Sleigh Bells right there.
Tell us what you were going to say. Quickly summarize. You can do it.
I was going to say, what they were used for. Sleigh bells, being used attached to sleighs to warn folks when coming to intersections that a sleigh was approaching. I've got Katie was referencing those sleighs that are in a case, not too far from where she's sitting right now. but I believe these are the sleigh bells that are sitting in the case that she was talking about. But yeah, sleigh bells attached to sleighs, so people could hear that a horse-drawn sleigh was coming if they were nearby, maybe nearby an intersection or other pathway. And like Katie was talking about, these sleigh bells have these pretty pedal designs on them that are on these sleigh bells pictured here. And we just, of course, associate them with winter time, with that that very distinctive sound of those sleigh bells. And of course, there's songs out there, jingle bells, and so on and so forth, that we associate with the holiday season. But I also read that sleigh bells, weren't just used in the wintertime. They were used in other times of the year. And yeah, that's what I was going to say about sleigh bells. And one last promo here of the CCFPD Snowflake Search starting this Thursday, January 21st. Find all your family, your friends. If you're looking for an excuse to get out with your family and friends this wintertime, the CCFPD Snowflake Search is the perfect opportunity for you to do so if you're local here in Champaign County or Central Illinois. We've hidden 30 beautifully painted snowflakes that were painted by CCFPD staff members at 6 different forest preserves throughout the county, and we'd love to see how many you can find. So if you find those snowflakes at Champaign County Forest Preserve properties, take a picture of you next to them and use the hashtag CCFPD Snowflake Search when you find them. We're also going to be posting clues and riddles on the CCFPD Snowflake Search Facebook event page. So if you haven't done so already, go to the CCFPD Snowflake Search Facebook event page, where you can find all of the latest updates on the Snowflake Search as it happens, again, from January 21st all the way to February 28th this season. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. Any final words from Barb or Katie here?
Well, next time you're out in the snow, just stop and notice how silent it is. That's why you need sleigh bells. You can't hear anybody coming.
That makes sense.
You can't hear that. You can't hear that sleigh coming. You can't hear the horses unless the horses are neighing. Can't hear anything until you hear the sleigh bells. I always used to think they were just decorative, but they're not. They're actually functional.
Got a purpose.
They make such a nice sound, don't they?
They do. They have a lovely sound.
It's not like a horn, like, it's sweet. I love it.
So that's all I know.
Hope we get some snow soon.
Yeah.
We had some nice snow this past weekend because it was like pretty on the ground, but not hard to drive in or walk in. So,
that's true.
That's my favorite kind.
Me too. Yeah, it's all. I'm looking out our window right here in our backyard. It's all melted off. Yeah.
Soon, I bet, though.
Yeah.
Well, happy winter, everybody.
Yeah, happy winter. Thanks, Barb, Katie, joining us for this Mornings with the Museum program. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
When's our next one, Pat?
The next one is February 10th. We're going to try to do these regularly on the second Wednesday of each month. February 10th is the next Mornings with the Museum program. The theme for that one is love stories. So tune in for some love stories. And be sure to tune in so you can share some with us as well.
Okay. We'll be there.
Okay, bye-bye.
See you guys.